afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacaster Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane, looking at the Wehrmacht. And this time it's not the late game, it's sort of another, shall we say, weird element of the Wehrmacht. It's the Grenadier squad. And no, I'm not here to talk about the god-awful uniforms, particularly the summer uniforms. No, though, I could easily make an entire... Hell, I could make an entire series. You know, that could last an entire year on just how terrible the Grenadiers are visually and just explain why their visual design is god-awful. But we're not here to discuss that. Though again, I could make a full series on that. That's really just one of the things that's always bugged me the most about the Wehrmacht. It's the Grenadiers visuals. But no, we're not here to talk about that. No, we're here to talk about the Grenadiers' role within the Wehrmacht and sort of the role vis-a-vis the opponent. Because, I mean, the Wehrmacht sort of designed again the late game faction, sort of more elite compared to the Russians, you know, more raw conscripts. If you sort of look at the Grenadier squad, there's something that certainly increasingly stands out. Again, for an elite infantry squad, it's basically one of the cheaper infantry squads in the game. It's 240 manpower, a 4-man squad, which is reasonably potent in a way, but at the same time, most people would pretty much just, you know, go really heavy on them, like 4 Grenadiers. They'll try just to move on as fast as possible by skipping tier 2 entirely, because the Grenadiers just aren't particularly good, you know, in sort of in the middle ground there. They're just not that good anyways. And so with constant getting buffed, they might certainly fall even further behind, because, I mean, again, they're also very unique in being the only infantry squad where you have to actually build a structure to be able to get them. I mean, that actually is a bit of a thing, because everybody else can more or less get the infantry squad out pretty much right away. The Wehrmacht first has to build and then get out the infantry. And again, that basically means they'll arrive later than any other infantry squad to the battlefield. And in most cases, again, compared to the Allies, they'll be, you know, rather undergunned in comparison, meaning the Allies will get, you know, the better positions, and the Grenadiers sort of have to attack into that. That combined with their many weaknesses, including they are 4-man squad, which means they can be easily wiped, they don't have any bolster, they're limited to 1 light machine, whereas again, in British infantry, double Brens, American infantry, double BARs, list goes on. I mean, there's some elements where they sort of just don't particularly, you know, feel good to play with, to be honest. Unless, again, you go for an awful lot, a bunch of them, to the extent which you have. But again, you're the Wehrmacht, so really be supposed to be just, you know, spamming, you know, infantry like that, like you're the Soviets, right? I mean, you're sort of forced into playing a Soviet playstyle with infantry that's clearly not made for it. And I mean, you sort of look at forms and so on, and one of the complaints will always be the Grenadiers are just too small. I mean, talking with friends and, you know, other people, they'll be like, you know, they're too small, they need to be bigger. And, you know, increasingly I'm sort of thinking, yeah, because when you think about it, all those things I just sort of went through, they sort of highlight that the Grenadiers just don't particularly fit. They don't particularly make sense. Again, we're talking, you know, the elite Wehrmacht sort of stuff, you know, again, yeah, we're talking a 240 manpower squad. How does that fit in with sort of the whole Wehrmacht aesthetic, right? Again, there's sort of, you know, to be lower manpower, yet we're sort of 4-man cheap manpower squads. How? They're also supposed to be the combined arms faction, but they're not particularly encouraged towards it. I mean, there's no bonuses, no abilities to work with it. And essentially, with the rifle grenades, they also basically function as their own artillery. So, I mean, to an extent, you're not even encouraged to bring in support weapons at times with them. In that regard, the rifle grenades probably one of those hated abilities ever. So we sort of further get into some weirder situations with the Wehrmacht Grenadiers, where we sort of have to wonder, maybe one of the Wehrmacht's long-term issues, besides the Wehrmacht's tier 4 being rubbish, is just the Grenadiers have never particularly fit the design. Which is sort of, you know, what I'm increasingly coming to. I mean, I might just myself accepted the Grenadiers for sort of, you know, that's just how they're supposed to be, but the more you think about it, the more you think sort of how the entire faction's supposed to operate. Maybe the answer is the Grenadiers are actually just not that good. Again, they just don't fit the design, and, you know, we need to sort of look at, well, how can we do the Grenadiers better than, besides just, you know, the obvious, you know, make them better. Because at the same time, I mean, as people can easily spam them, I mean, again, there's clearly something there. So again, we can't just directly buff them at that level. I mean, we basically have to change how the Grenadier squad sort of is seen and operates. And in that regard, I think we sort of have to look to some of the other, you know, premium allied infantry and sort of look, alright, I guess we're going to have to go something in that direction. I mean, we'll basically have to look, making part, at least a 5-man squad. But then, of course, the question is, well, what's going to make, the Brits different and the Riflemen different? I mean, there might be, some other changes than necessary. And, in that regard, the question might, or the answer might be, maybe we just make them either slightly more expensive, 5-man squad, or slightly cheaper. When you say, like, 290-man, power 270, we could even be bold to go 300. That would be probably a bit excessive. But basically, a 5-man Grenadier squad, because at that point, again, I mean, they're still, going to arrive the first squad at least roughly on the same time as a 240-man power squad, but it's certainly going to have a bit more of an impact. You're also going to be less, shall we say, encouraged to just have to go for a ton of them to have a chance on the battlefield, which might also then help the late game bit, because you're also less likely to just get them wiped. So just in that one, they'd certainly, perhaps be a lot better in supporting the support weapons or working with them. They'd sort of be better defensively because they can hold on to ground longer. And of course, because they're more expensive, they'd be able to be a lot bloody harder to just spam. I mean, they certainly fit in a bit better with the whole, Wehrmacht aesthetic. And that's just, by increasing the squad number by a bit, again, because of the just damage, received accuracy bonus and all that. Of course, we don't want to make them just still spammable super infantry. We don't want, Rifleman 2.0. Or the British Infantry Section 2.0. I mean, we don't want to, repeat, cheap, spammable, basic infantry. We sort of have to create something a bit smarter than that. Something that's more fun to play with and to play against. And again, the current design of the Grenadiers certainly seems to all indicate they aren't particularly, good in either way unless, spam them a bunch. At which point, again, you might as well go for Ostrom, who are even cheaper and can get on the field faster. Plus, again, by 5-man squads and other bits, they can maybe also help differentiate them, make the Pentagon stand out a bit more known as assault infantry. But so, like, again, we sort of say, alright, we move up to, higher price point, we give them, a larger squad size. I mean, what about the rest? We still have to make them sort of feel, fit better. We still have to maybe, encourage them not to just spam them, but actually use them more intelligently. I mean, for starters, again, that probably means the rifle grenade sort of gets changed as well. Maybe it becomes an upgrade with the sort of grenades can then sort of just fire it here and there. Maybe it'll happen automatically. Maybe it's just a more free-to-use ability, but with a fast cooldown. And then it has a timer on it, maybe. Or you sort of get access to different types of smoke grenades. Then maybe smoke grenades or something like that. I don't know. I mean, those are just sort of the things there. Or maybe they can sort of only use it in certain conditions. I don't know. Just spitballing here. But I think the overall big idea, for me at least, is maybe we sort of look into, making them coordinate better with the support units. Machine guns, mortars, some kind of ability, either a sort of, presence near the support weapons or just being in the same sector as the support weapons, so they can get some kind of marked target ability that machine guns and mortars then benefit from. That way, sort of trying to that way create that synergy between the Grenadiers and the support weapons, thusly meaning you have to benefit more from using support weapons in conjunction with the Grenadiers, rather than just, spamming, 4 or 5 Grenadier squads. Now they're just, big and tough. Obviously, the regular rifle grenade are trying to be replaced with the Stielhandgranate. But, with that, we could sort of create, more of an actual role for the Grenadiers. We sort of create an infantry squad, basically, that sort of fits the aesthetic of the Wehrmacht better. Because, again, when you think about it, the Grenadiers just don't particularly fit the bill. They just don't add up, do they? So, by just sort of trying to analyse that and then sort of coming up with ideas, I think we sort of move towards a more useful Grenadier squad. More that something fits it better. We can usually create sort of different packages for them. Maybe sort of like line squad with a light machine gun, maybe certain abilities. Then there could be another upgrade which sort of gives maybe another weapon and some other bits there and capabilities. Because the Grenadiers themselves were in a reasonably flexible infantry squad. I mean, they were in some that were basically just doubled as pioneers, so that way they could maybe get the ability to cut wire, lay down sandbags, lay down their own wire, or something like that. Maybe lay down some basic mines. Again, sort of creating the more, again, elite but more generalist infantry squad for the Wehrmacht that could then sort of serve as the building blocks of the rest of the force. So that's sort of how I'm imagining what we could do with the Grenadiers, because, I mean, the Wehrmacht Tier 4 is definitely an issue, but there's also an issue in the Wehrmacht Tier 1. Obviously not as glaring, but again, when you have to think about how you have to play the Wehrmacht, which is increasingly like an early game faction, I mean, you have to go for a lot of infantry and play them very aggressively. You just sort of have to wonder, isn't there maybe a better way to do it by, maybe, just maybe, make the initial Grenadier squad support the overall idea of a late game faction better, and sort of try to guide them towards it. Lastly, of course, you could also then add abilities that become unlocked once they hit tier 4. That way, there would also be some incentive towards that getting there. So those would sort of be my ideas, because at some point, they're going to have to take a harder look at the Wehrmacht than they currently have, and that, I think, should include overhauling the Grenadiers, like just sort of rebuilding them from scratch into something that fits the Wehrmacht as a faction, because currently, again, they're sort of more in line with an early aggressive faction, right? You go for a bunch of Grenadiers, you push hard, you hit hard, and you kick hard with the jackboots, but you don't play them particularly defensively, because they're just not going to work like that. So that would sort of be my suggestion there. Feel free to agree or disagree with me, but I definitely think sort of the Grenadier squad as it currently is just not viable and needs an overhaul, a redo, basically. So there you go, a thought from me, on the Wehrmacht's Grenadiers and what could be done better. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments, like, dislike, share with friends and so on there. And of course, if you like what you do consider overall pledging on Patreon or donating. Links in the description. This does help me out a ton with making these videos. Try to do this for a living, so every little bit helps. But otherwise, also let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this, because there's probably a lot of Wehrmacht units and maybe other units in there that could do some overhauling with. But really, right now, I think the Wehrmacht, sort of just considering what happens in the December balance preview, are going to be in need of a serious, overhaul and retuning by Relic, because they're probably the faction that's sort of been left behind the longest. So again, hope you enjoyed it, and of course a big thanks to all the Patreon supporters already. You're all wonderful, charming people. So thank you all, and see you all for another video. Cheers.